Hello there. As the Brexit negotiations approach the political wire, the EU chief Brexit negotiator is calling on the EU27 leaders to appeal to Boris Johnson to step into the talks. Firstly, please subscribe and like this video to give my channel a boost, and I'm always uploading new content, so please do check back daily. And a big thanks to my Patreon and PayPal supporters. With 124 days until the end of the Brexit Implementation Period and only 63 days until the Brussels-driven deadline of the 31st of October, there are rumblings that the talks will go to the wire. And not only that, it seems that the UK tactics are working as Michel Barnier calls on EU member state leaders to try and drag Boris directly into the talks, presumably to try and get him to make the compromises that the UK negotiator David Frost cannot make. But if the EU27 leaders do start getting involved, where will that leave Michel Barnier? Sidelined? Or having to negotiate on ever-shifting policy sands? That will not do the Barnier reputation any favours, which for a man with further ambitions might not come as a welcome development. And dragging Boris Johnson more directly into the fray would leave the UK negotiator David Frost and his team possibly having to play second or even third fiddle. And that would be a silly thing for Boris to get embroiled in at this stage. He needs to stick to his strategy. I raise this possibility because the Canadian Foreign Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, in London for talks with Dominic Raab, suggested that Brussels will cave into UK demands right at the end. But it should be Frost that deals with it, not the PM. Speaking to Mark Urban on the BBC Newsnight programme, he said that in the last few hours of the Brexit talks, the EU will do what it did during the EU-Canada negotiations and make a last-minute compromise. The first thing he did, though, was stress the importance of maintaining stability and predictability with the $40 billion worth of trade Canada and the UK already do. He was then asked by Mark Urban that if it took Canada 8 years to agree and ratify a deal, what chance does the UK have to strike one in the next 6 to 7 weeks, which is apparently the deadline for reaching an agreement on this future relationship? To which Champagne said, "Any trade negotiator would tell you that it's really the last 2 or 3 things that get a lot of time to negotiate. I am not in the secrets, but I would think a good part of the negotiation has been undergoing. From what I understand, the parties will continue to negotiate and the issues seem to be clearer and clearer by the day. I think it is doable. I don't think time is the main impediment. When we negotiated CPTPP on the Asian side and even the Canada-EU deal, some of the most difficult issues came and got resolved in the very last hours because people knew there was a deadline. You look at the alternative to an agreement and you then think of your best interests, and then you find common ground in the very last hours." Now that's the view of an outsider, though. An outsider who did not have to contend with demands that his country hand over vast swathes of its fishing grounds, kowtow to EU state aid rules and succumb to the ECJ jurisdiction. Anyway, we have the Telegraph reporting that the German Chancellor Angela Merkel is hinting that the Brexit talks will go down to the wire and will keep her staff busy right until the end of 2020. The crucial weeks are now approaching to clarify the future relationship, she said. But with Germany holding the rotating 6-month presidency of the EU, Merkel had already said that there would be no talk of Brexit at the next EU Council meeting due to lack of progress in the negotiations. But talk from diplomatic sources indicates this might change depending on round 8 of the Brexit negotiations starting on the 7th of September, says the Telegraph report. Now, speaking to the Express, former Tory MEP and academic research director at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Syed Kamal, said that the UK's strong tactics had removed the EU's initial advantage. For much of the withdrawal agreement negotiations, the EU played hardball, while the UK seemed to approach the negotiations as a friendly conversation, with both sides aiming for a win-win scenario. So it's reassuring to see the UK now taking a tough stance, he said. Given that Michel Barnier had the upper hand for much of the negotiations, I am not surprised that he is complaining about the UK's tougher stance. While we should aim to sign a UK-EU trade deal, this should not be at any price. Well, we do have the policy that no deal is better than a bad deal. Kamal continued by saying, without an overall UK-EU trade agreement, we may see some sector-specific agreements where it is in both sides' interest and uncontroversial. And that is the sort of scenario I pointed at in a recent video, where we set up a holding pattern until the dust has settled in the new year. Kamal went on, many British companies trade on WTO terms with buyers and sellers in countries with which the UK and EU has no formal trade agreement, since both sides see mutual benefit. You would expect diplomats on both sides to warn of the dangers of no deal and to point fingers at each other, since they're just doing their jobs. The problem with the blame game, though, is it soon becomes the only game in town, as protagonists start spending more and more energy and time on defending reputations rather than finding solutions. Anyway, it's evident that Michel Barnier has been unable to boss the frost, so he's calling in the big guns to try and get Boris in the firing line. Maybe Barnier thinks he'll be able to slot the ball in the back of a vassal state Brexit Britain net in the final seconds of overtime, if he can get the substitute goalie on the pitch. Who knows? But one imagines that calling in 27 leaders to get involved right near the end of these negotiations might end up muddying the pond no end. However, the end of the political silly season is now upon us, with Parliament back at work next Tuesday. And after the apparent drift and directionless travel of the government over the last few weeks, I'm hoping to see some real action. This is when Boris can mobilise his 79-strong majority. I'll call it 79, as he might lose the one MP that is currently under police investigation. But Boris still has an extremely healthy majority to get primary legislation through to deal with some of the problems we've seen recently. No longer will he be forced to tinker with limited secondary legislation to try and address serious problems. And I gather from several grapevines that next week will be a big week for UK politics, slapping down a very small number of Tory problem MPs and sticking it to the left, is what I'm hearing. Anyway, if you want to hear more from me, please don't forget to subscribe and also press that little bell, or you won't get any notifications. And if you want to see more of me, buy a mug with my mug on it by following the link in the descriptions box below, and support me on Patreon or PayPal. So what do you think about all of this? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching.